Hi, and welcome to another edition of Studio 411. I'm your host, Larry Dasilva. Well, we always love when some singers stop by, stop by via satellite, that is. We've got Irlene Mandrell, the youngest of the Mandrell sisters, who has released her debut solo album. Now, Irlene's been on the music scene for years, but after all these years, finally we get to hear Irlene joining, of course, her well-known sisters, Barbara and Louise, of course, have had long-running solo careers. Irlene has a new project called Thanks to You on Reviver Records. This patriotic project delivers Irlene's heartfelt message to our nation's military, veterans, law enforcement, and first responders. And we're going to talk about that. We'll also talk about a new book that's just about to hit the presses, as well as her long-running career and just a marvelous, marvelous career that she's had, and much more to do. Irlene, welcome to Studio 411. How are you?
Oh, great. Everything's just so wonderful. Been having a wonderful time with all the projects, and I have a granddaughter now, so everything's been extra special.
Indeed. Now, it's interesting how these things, whether you planned it this way or not necessarily the granddaughter, but as far as the book and the CD, you've got all these things kind of coming together at once. Tell me a little bit. Let's start with the CD. Talk a little bit about the CD, Thanks to You.
Well, actually, and it is kind of a coincidence that everything is kind of being released at the same time. This CD I had been working on with my husband, who's the producer, Pat Holt, for a couple years now. We put out a couple singles off the CD, just independent charts, and they did really well. But my husband is a Vietnam-era veteran, and both of our dads were World War II veterans, and we were doing like charities for the veterans and different things. And someone mentioned it'd be great if you had a CD, and I said I'd love that. And I really hadn't recorded before. And Pat and I were dating at the time, and he said, "Well, honey, I could help you with that." I'm like, "Wow, you could." So we started listening to songs. The first song that was released as a single off the album, "We Will Stand," when I heard it, I just started crying. The words meant so much to me, and Pat felt the same way. So when we decided to go ahead and just keep listening to songs to make an album, it took us a couple years that we just loved so many songs. We didn't even put all of them on there that we wanted to, but Reviver Records came to us and said, if you'll go ahead and finish this, that we'll put it out on Reviver. And so we pushed, to get it done. And we said, we'll do these songs on the next album, because at some point you have to stop and go ahead and finish the product.
Absolutely. And let's give a little shout out to, started out as just a boyfriend and now has become a husband as well as producer. Your husband, Pat Holt, again, as you said, a Vietnam vet himself. But again, he's worked with some pretty big heavyweights, Johnny Cash, June Carter Cash, the Judds, Dr. Hook, Keith Whitley, which goes back a ways, Alabama, among others. So he's had quite a varied career, and you're like, I think he knows what he's doing,
Well, you know what? Actually, I met Pat about 30 some odd years ago. His first session, he said he engineered on, was Conway and Loretta. But I met him when my first husband, and they're friends, and he still plays bass with me sometimes, was playing bass for Eddie Rabbitt, and Pat was engineering and helping produce the Eddie Rabbitt album back in those days. And we just hadn't seen each other in years and years, and we reconnected, and we were both doing a favor for a friend, and it was at his studio. So we just had so much in common, and our kids knew each other. We didn't even realize that was our kids. His daughter was coming to my house in middle school with our kids that are not all out of school, but we just had a lot of foundation, and it was just perfect. And he's got such a heart. He's a wonderful man.
So in other words, I can already say officially, you already have tunes in the can, or at least mapped out that when this CD, I'm sure, does very well, then you're already like 2 steps ahead of the next CD
release. We put them in the can. We had songs that we heard that we said we want to record those, but if we're going to finish it, we better just stop and record these. But there was some really good written songs. Matter of fact, after it was out, he produced a song. He brought a song home that I went, oh my gosh, I love that song, but it's too late. The album's out. And there was somebody he was recording that recorded the song. And I love this guy, and he does it perfect. So, he's still working on military things, and I'm still loving him. But we'll talk about it because it's not even quite released yet. So I'll wait to mention who that is. But I had him do a show with me somewhere, and I told everybody, you're going to love this song. And he got up, he got a standing ovation with it. So
there you go.
There's still some great songs out there that, so many people love our military men, and like I do, and Pat, and your heart, you can just feel it in their heart when they write the songs.
Now, I know one of the songs as I was listening to the CD, getting ready for the interview, and I said, where do I know this song? So I Googled it, of course, and then I said, oh, that's right. A great song called I'm Already There, which was done by a band called Lone Star, which actually not only was a big country song, but crossed over to the pop chart. So you do that on the CD as well.
There was a couple songs that had been recorded before, and I mentioned that one right away because I had heard that, and there's some personal feelings where the song relates to things, but also there's a song that was recorded that my niece, Christy Sutherland, wrote, and she did it. She's a Christian artist. A lot of you might know her. She's won a lot of awards, but she's a great songwriter and singer, and she wrote a song called Somebody Died for Me, and it was recorded by quite a few Christian artists, but it goes to the military too, because when Christy was on the road performing with my sister Louise, they saw on the news where there was a funeral, and somebody was at their best friend's funeral with that best friend's family, and the best friend had died saving his life. So Christy wrote a song about it, and it puts tears in my eyes thinking about it, because it first starts out about somebody died for me, and then it switches that's how the guy was. It's not a surprise that he died that way, because because of the way he tried to live his life, and he always used to say, somebody died for me, talking about Jesus. So it's a great song. And then there was one that was recorded before, let me think, Letters from Home.
Yes, track number 2, yeah.
Yeah, and I always love that song too. So those are the ones that, most of them were original, but those songs are just so great to me that I wanted to do them.
Now let's talk a little bit about Irlene as a youngster. Now again, you come from obviously a family. Anyone who doesn't know, of course, the Mandrell family, the Mandrell sisters primarily. But tell me a little bit about you. You're born in Corpus Christi, Texas. Now, did you spend several years there, or were you moving around a lot back in those days?
Well, my dad was a policeman in Corpus Christi. I'm the youngest of the three, and when I was 6 weeks old, we moved to California. So I know about Corpus Christi because we went back, and as I was a drummer on the road with Barbara, we performed in a coliseum there and stuff. And it's a beautiful town. But it was amazing because my daddy, having been a policeman and left to go to California where his brother was, he wanted to be a policeman there in California, and it turned out there wasn't a reciprocity. He could not carry that on over. And even though he was only in his 30s, he couldn't be a policeman. He was too old in California there. So it's funny how the puzzle works looking back, because had he not switched and then later got back into music and opened a music store in Oceanside, I don't think all of us would have been playing music. So it's funny how you look back at life and some of your biggest disappointments are the best things for you.
I saw a clip of you on I want to say, Early's 80 episode of Password with Tom Kennedy. It must have been not long after he took over from the late Alan Ludden on that classic show, and they were asking you, I guess it came up where you were living, and you said, oh, I love California, I want to stay here. Of course, you were doing the show with your sisters, I believe, at that time, but said, well, but you made sure to say, well, but yeah, love Nashville, that's home too. So I'm thinking as the years have gone on, now you've kind of relocated back to Tennessee area. So you've at this point spent...
Yes, Nashville's home, and I love Nashville. And that's where all my family is now. But when you have lived in California as a child, wherever you've lived as a child and you have foundation, and you go back, there's something there that kind of draws you to it. And this is the memories. I was probably 11 years old when we moved to Tennessee. So when I was there in California, it was so exciting, and I felt like I was kind of going back home to my roots. But I didn't have any children. I've had 3 children. I have a grandchild. My sisters all live here, and everybody in Nashville is definitely home.
Oh, at this point, I would say everybody, the whole clan, as they said, is all within probably 50 miles of one another. So that's certainly understandable. We've got a shot here. We've got, of course, Irlene Mandrell joining us for the hour here on Studio 411, the new CD called Thanks to You on Reviver Records, as well as she's got a new book we're going to talk about a little bit called God Reigns Miracles, co-authored with Don Tomlinson, and even a forward from one of my favorites, Little Miss Dynamite, Brenda Lee. So we'll definitely touch on that a little bit. For more information on Irlene, IrleneMandrell.com. Of course, you're no stranger to the spotlight, television credits, Barbara Mandrell, the Mandrell sisters, Hee Haw, The Love Boat, and so much more. I was impressed, and I watched the show intermittently. I wanted to talk a little bit about Hee Haw because we don't have occasion with so many of those older artists having left us, but I mean, you were there for like 8 years on that show, and really would have been there longer, except it ended in syndication.
Which is, at the time, for sure, it was, and it's being syndicated again, so it was the longest running show. At the time, it was 25 years. So being on the last 8 years, I still was kind of a rookie to them. But so many of the greats we have lost, including the creator, Sam Lovello, passed away last year, a couple of years ago anyway, and I loved him so much. But he loved everybody. He was like everybody's father away from home, because he treated everybody like his kids, and it was one big family. I left our show that was family to an extended family, people that I had known for years. As a matter of fact, growing up called Grandpa Jones Uncle Grandpa, and Ramona, and I'd worked on the road so much as a drummer. We also worked shows with Roy Clark, and just had so many great experiences before I ever got on the show.
And speaking of which, she set up this next shot beautifully. We've got an image of taken a few years ago, Roy Clark on the left, Sam Lovello in the center, and then Irlene on the right. Sam, and I knew this and I had forgotten it, but then doing the research for your appearance, for those who don't know, they say, well, that's a little before my time. Well, I'll give you a little more recent news. Sam's, I believe, one of his youngest children is Tori Lovello, who now is the manager of I believe, the Arizona Diamondbacks. And for those of us here on the East Coast, was the interim manager a couple of years ago for the Red Sox, as well as a bench coach. So, he's gone on to a great career, and his dad certainly got to, at least hear that he had gotten to be the manager. But I was just fascinated at Sam's career. I mean, he started out with guys like Jonathan Winters, and worked, with many people in Hollywood, and then came up with a couple of other people with this idea for this Hee Haw show, which, frankly, a lot of people didn't think would get off the ground, and you were a big part of it.
It was on a major network, and the story, and I wasn't connected to it at that time, but the story I had heard was right at that time that it got on the major network was the time that we lost shows like, and if you don't know Hee Haw, you're not going to know these shows either. But Petticoat Junction and Green Acres and all of that was very, what do you call it, rural or hillbilly?
They called it rural. Yeah, the network executive said rural. We're purging all that stuff.
And it happened to all those great shows, even though the ratings were wonderful. But Sam had the foresight to go ahead and start syndication, and I think it did better and longer in syndication than it ever could have done in network. He was a very smart man.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So a marvelous shot of you and Roy, and of course, that must have been something, because growing up, I'm sure your older sister Barbara worked with them probably as well. Roy Clark and Buck Owens, what people didn't realize, I mean, these were two stablemates at Capitol Records, and to be the hosts of this show that became this juggernaut that you then had the pleasure to work on, I mean, they were both outstanding musicians and icons in the country music field.
And still being recognized. It's been with Barbara, she's been retired for quite a while, but she and Roy Clark both got inducted to the Musicians Hall of Fame together, and he was an incredible musician and entertainer and singer, and had #1 songs like crazy, and Buck Owens, of course, too. Dwight Yoakam's following his footsteps, right? So doing all the stuff with Buck Owens and stuff. So he kept Buck's name made it recognizable to the next generation, which I thought was great.
Just now, tell me some behind-the-scenes stories. I know there were a couple that we're probably not going to talk about, so I'm not going to mention who they were. But you had quite a few characters on that Hee Haw show. Of course, George Lindsay and Grandpa Jones. I mean, tell me some of your interactions with these icons of the country business.
Do you remember that Jim and John Hager?
Yes.
From Hee Haw was on for years. They were twins, and I had a shotgun shoot that I followed in Louise's footsteps. She started one for a few years in Nashville, and then I started one. Started them shooting along with a lot of other people that had never had shooting sports before, and I would see them all the time. And the thing is that they were so cool. They were like one person, and let's see, who else do I? I mentioned to you when we were talking before that I'm working on another book.
Yes, yeah.
Well, I also have stories that happened to me, and it's called, it's a book that I'm starting because Louise used to do a show in Pigeon Forge, and people would come back, and Louise, my sister, she'd say, she was bragging on you, and they'd tell me that, she said, but nice house, nobody home. And so, because I kind of a little bit ditzy at times. So anyway, I'm writing a book that's also called Nobody's Home All the Time. And now I'm in it a lot more than most. And I told you I have one with Paul Newman, but there was a couple with Roy Clark. And
he strikes me that he was a practical joker. Am I correct?
But this is just me. I just make myself embarrassed at times. And he was studying with Victoria Hallman and I for some pictures, because we are located in Nashville and it was being shot here, and most everybody else is in California. So anyway, we're standing there and wardrobe's coming in, hair, and I just have a tendency, because I have kids or whatever, to help. If there's something going on, I'll do it. And so someone was touching up his hair, and I looked over, and he had kind of a low-cut shirt, and I saw a string, so I just pulled it, and he screamed like, ah! It was one gray hair on his chest. And there's some other things. He's so funny. He's cool. But
marvelous guitar player. Marvelous.
Yes, he is. And I've heard stories about him surprising beginning guitar players with gifts of a guitar here and there. I've heard a couple times that they've helped. They said I wouldn't be playing, couldn't afford it if it hadn't been for Roy Clark. And he found out about it and surprised him. Not that he's going to go buy anybody else that hears has a guitar, but he has such a great heart. We worked a show with him before I was on Hee Haw. I was playing drums, early teens, and he had a band that he had hired on the road, but it started pouring down rain, and it's like the buses were getting stuck in the mud after the show. It was one of those where you're working under a tent, and you take they're taking mops, the handles, and pushing the rain off the sides and stuff. So I think the band was a little afraid for a while of performing. He came over and said, will you all back me up? We're like, of course we will, the whole band. So they ended up backing him up after we would. But after the fact, they were in mud up to their waist, trying to get the buses out. And he was out in it. He's just a normal person, do what you have to do to get the job done. So it was great.
Irlene Mandrell, of course, one of the Mandrell sisters, on her own now, as she has been for quite a while now, with her first solo CD, Thanks to You, on Reviver Records. IrleneMandrell.com for more information, as well as a book just about to hit the press, God Reigns Miracles, co-authored with Don Tomlinson, with a forward from singer Brenda Lee. Matter of fact, Brenda Lee, for those who don't know, one of the few in the rock and roll and country halls of fame. So nice forward to get from someone like Brenda, for sure. You talked before about music. Now, your family, Your dad, I get the vibe that he really was instrumental in kind of getting you girls all to start performing, because you all have musical aptitudes, drums, I guess from the age of 11. Barbara, of course. What was that thing Barbara played? It's like a, I should know what it is. It makes that twangy sound. What is that? Is that a harp of some kind?
You can play different styles, but it's a steel guitar.
Yeah.
There's a lot of slide to it, but it was a pedal steel guitar.
The one, no, but the one I saw on with Johnny Cash one time, it was like the one where.
The dobro.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that does. Yes.
Yeah, she is unbelievable at that.
Well, I had mentioned my dad had bought a music store in Oceanside, and at the time Barbara was about 15, 16 years old, and my dad started the band. And Louise and I were too young to play in it, but my mom had taught Barbara music before she can even read, and my mom had been a keyboard or piano player in her church. So they said, well, we need a bass player. So Mom learned bass. Barbara's husband now, that later became a Navy pilot, was a drummer, and Dad, and they had a guitar player. So Louise and I weren't playing, but Barbara and all of them went to all the places during Vietnam. It wasn't USO, but some of the harder places to get to and stuff like that. But Dad also had a music store there, and he'd asked Barbara to come in, and she was, I think, a true prodigy when it came to music. She played everything. And things she hadn't played before, Dad would say, well, people would be interested in certain instruments. They'd say, well, Barbara's here. Have you ever played this? She'd say no. And he goes, well, pick it up and see how hard it was. And then a couple of minutes, she'd be playing it. And they're like, yeah, it can't be that hard. She's never played before. But she was just amazing. And she'd run around, just played just about every instrument.
That's amazing. And you, I was impressed, having known some musicians over the years. We always look for, when we see someone playing the drums, is how they hold the stick in this hand, whether they hold it like a rock drummer or kind of like a jazz musician. And I've watched enough of you. Who taught you how to play the drums?
Well, actually, and I held it both ways. The first person that I learned from while everybody was overseas, Louise and I stayed with our aunt and uncle. And my uncle worked with me on my drums, Al Mandrell. He's passed away a long time ago, but he was a Dixieland jazz drummer. And so then it was what you're talking about. And I think it has to do with also if you've ever done march, because of the drum being slanted.
Right.
But later, playing before drums were mic'd, playing in big package shows that were outside at state fairs or auditoriums, and they weren't mic'd, you play a little heavier, and I like it heavier. Plus, to do country, you do a lot of rim shot, so you're right there. So that was a lot of why I play with a match grip.
Yeah, no, definitely, yeah. That's, we call it here like a jazz grip, when it's kind of like just kind of resting between, the two fingers, as opposed to kind of this, we call the animal.
But I do mainly a match grip.
Yeah, but I saw you were tearing it up on some clip, and it was a hee-haw clip, because I could see the logo in the background. You were just very impressive, very impressive. And so,
the coolest, if you ever get a chance to see, there's a YouTube out, and it's called The Unknown Band, the most famous unknown band. And it was the biggest honor for me, because it was some show that was put together but Barbara played steel, and I was on drums, had, I think Charlie Daniels, Ray Stevens, Steve, can't think of everybody right now, and I should. But
you got an all-star band there so far, I'm telling you.
It was. And I can't think of all the names right now, because I get nervous under pressure thinking, because I don't always remember.
Well, you know what Roy Clark said about you, so. Oh my goodness, we've got a shot if we can pull it up. It's a recent shot. I just wanted to show the audience the Mandrell sisters today, along with their mom. So again, your dad unfortunately has passed, but your mom it looks like she's still doing well as all the sisters. And I understand now Barbara as kind of retired, self-imposed retirement. But is there any ever talk about? I know she claims she hasn't sung in literally, almost a decade and a half. Has there been any coercing to say, look, there's a lot of money out there if the Mandrell sisters get back together again, or that's just not on the table?
No, we know that that's not on the table. I once in a while go to the church that she goes to. I used to go there, but we moved a little further away and stand next to her and just to hear her sing, because I love her singing still. But no, and before you would have texting, she would call and you don't answer and she'll leave a happy birthday on your phone.
Yeah.
But now it's like you text happy birthday, so I lose that. But she still sounds good, really good.
Now we text and no one knows each other anymore. Isn't it amazing? So we've got a shot to, at times, I understand that you and your daughters, they help you when you're out on tour. We can pull up that shot. Irlene and her two daughters. And your daughters, Vanessa and Christina. I think, is Christina the tech expert there that helped you out there? There you go. There you go.
She's my daughter that gave me a granddaughter, so it's special. I love her husband. When they got married and stuff, I was so thrilled because, it's really cool when you think of your future son-in-law already is hoping he's your son, and he's made a wonderful husband and dad, and they're great. But I do have a son on another shot. I guess it's on the back of the CD where my son is a drummer.
Your son Derek, right? So he's a talented drummer and singer. So see, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So we've got generation upon generation. I'm sure the same can be said probably with Louise and with Barbara. It's like the King family, if you remember. They're a little before your time, but the King family.
No, actually, and I talk about them going overseas and staying with my aunt and uncle, I sat with my aunt and uncle, who was my dad's older brother and stuff, and watched Lawrence Welk and the Lennon sisters and the King family all in a row. And that was my bonding with them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, actually, you guys are kind of, I didn't even think about it till you mentioned it. Yeah, you're the Mandrell sisters, to me, was kind of a more modern version of like the Lennon sisters, only, you guys seemed to me had more musical talent, but they were wonderful, because in those days there wasn't really, yeah.
They are wonderful. I think the Lennon sisters are still performing, some of them.
Yeah.
I don't think Yums as ditzy as I.
Matter of fact, Kathy was the blonde. Do you remember Kathy was the blonde, really gorgeous one? They were, and I mean, I don't even want to tell you how old she is, but I mean, it's unbelievable because I mean, I remember as a kid when they were like in their 20s watching them, and I'm thinking, and she's how old now? Let's just say that she's definitely Social Security age. But then again, we're all getting there, so God bless her. But good stuff.
I worked something in Branson. What was I worked the Christmas show. I did a couple of songs for Jim Baker, but I did his son Ricky Baker's show. And one of the people there said that her mom was one of the Lennon sisters. And then she came back and said, they do a show in Branson, and if you come back, they'd love for you to be on the show.
There you go.
So I haven't been back since, but that's how I know they're still performing. And I think that's wonderful.
And because you brought it up, it's on my bucket list to go to Branson, Missouri, because I can remember when that first opened up, the late Andy Williams and so many others that were really instrumental in bringing theater and musical entertainment down there. Is that still thriving at this point in time as far as entertainment-wise?
I think it is. I know when Andy Williams was there and Louise was working the Palace, the Grand Palace, I was doing her Christmas show with her and stuff, and all the theaters were opening up and not so much construction at the time. And I think it kind of died down, but I think people are starting to push it again. So I do think it's really getting going again.
There you go. Irlene Mandrell joining us here for the hour on Studio 411, her new CD, solo project, Thanks to You, on Reviver Records. Matter of fact, CEO and President David Ross stated, quote, Irlene and her family are woven into the fabric of country music, and her unwavering support for our nation is beyond compare. And I'm sure he's not only telling the truth, but also the fact that your CD songs on this particular release, again, as we talked earlier, very much woven into the fabric of patriotism, military, and as well as our fire and police folks who risk their life every day for us here in this country. Let's see now. We have, what else do we have here? Oh my goodness. I forgot. Oh, I know what it was. Yes, Mr. Wayne Newton. I meant to ask you, there's a shot, if we can pull that up, of Wayne Newton and Irlene. Did you ever do any of those competition shows?
No, I have gotten to meet him a few times and get to see his show quite a few years ago. But recently, I did something for Neil McCoy, and evidently Wayne and Neil have done a lot of USO tours together.
Oh,
They're
yeah,
very
Wayne.
close.
Wayne goes back to the Bob Hope shows back in the 60s and 70s. Amazing. Amazing. No, I was thinking because Wayne, I believe, wasn't he on one of those Dancing with the Stars shows? And I said, I wonder if are you a good dancer? Maybe you should. That's a great thing to, get exposure as well as showcase all your talents.
I have danced over the years some because of the shows and because something's choreographed and you do it. And I would love that. I understand that you can go in and work with a choreographer for a while. So if that comes up, I would be
there you
very
go.
interested.
Oh, I think you heard it here first. I think she should definitely look into that because, I mean, my goodness, I know Wayne when he was on there. I think the only other one that was older than he was the former astronaut Buzz Aldrin, who was nearly 80. I mean, that's I give him props for trying to go on those competition shows at that age. It's amazing. But they comported themselves well. They didn't win, but you know what? Hey, sometimes it's not all about winning. It's about the experience. And certainly, as you well know, in this business, exposure is very key.
And experience is fun. I think that's the coolest thing is to be, and I hate to say celebrity, but I'm in the position to have gotten invited to different celebrity events. And one is where, and I used to go overboard because like the shotgun that I did with Louise, because I was practicing my handgun, she goes, I'm doing the shotgun tournament and you're in it. I heard her and Barbara talking about it. I'm like, you mean that moving target? But, once I did it, I fell in love. So I did, like, after that, about almost 14 years of raising money in my own tournament. And then I did when we talked about Paul Newman, we raced Legends car at the Marcali event. And it's for diabetes, I think it was. And I loved it. So I ended up getting a car, getting a sponsor, and for a couple of years, I was racing the Legends car. And it just seems like things you get to try that you normally don't do. Once you get involved, you want to keep doing it. So,
well, I was going to bring that up. Yeah, you've folks know you mainly, obviously, singer, performer, comedian. You were a cover girl model early in your career. You talked earlier, so people didn't know what she meant by a shoot. You are very active as far as having, how would you describe it? In other words, there's some photos with you with like a rifle. You're very much into, shooting. Yeah, I guess it would be.
Yeah, because you think about, if you're an artist, you might shoot a video. But we're talking about guns. I mentioned earlier that my dad had been a policeman. So growing up, he did teach us to shoot and teach us to protect ourselves. But also later we got involved with the shooting sports and shotgun shoots. And I was at my niece's reveal party the other day at a shotgun facility. And that's how they did the reveal, was by packing that clay. And once he shot the clay, the dust that went up was blue. So, we were kind of involved that much.
Let me ask you, not to get into politics or anything as far as guns and all that stuff, but when you were growing up, what would you say, or even for your kids or grandkids as they get older, what would you say is an acceptable age to then show a youngster how to handle a firearm?
How to handle one, we started very young. I think one of the reasons is to see what it will do. If you're totally naive about anything, it can be very dangerous. Just like you teach your child, if they happen to get in the cabinet and there's cleaning stuff, you want them to know this is something that would be very dangerous if you were to drink it. Right. That they're not to touch it. This sounds weird, but when I was a little girl, my dad, back in the day when they smoked, and he sent me in to get a pack of cigarettes off his end table, and his gun was in there. Now, later I realized that he followed me to watch me. We were taught not only do you not touch a gun that you see, that you get then and go tell an adult, which I then left and told my dad that the gun was there. You have to teach, you have to not just totally trust your child, just like if you have stairs and you've told them not to go down the stairs, you want to watch them and make sure that they're listening, because they can get injured. And it's training. It's not avoiding something that makes it safe. It's knowledge.
There you go. Well put. Well put. Now let's talk a little bit about the book, God Rains Miracles, co-authored with Don Tomlinson. Tell me a little bit, how did that project get together? Tell us a little bit about Don, family friend, author in his own right. How did this match get together?
So first of all, I've been keeping a journal for years, because we have so many incredible miracles in the family, so many even before I was born, that I started writing it out. And I had hoped to one day turn it into a book, but I hadn't gone there. I wasn't a writer. I liked the way I wrote the stories, because I wrote them as close to the facts as I could. And then one day, he's also a songwriter, and he had left one of his books with in my husband's studio for me, and even though I hadn't met him. And Pat, my husband, gave me the book, and I read it. But what I did was so cool. It was an inspirational book. I won't go into what was wrong. For some reason, sometimes I'm always happy and laughing at myself, but times you get a little melancholy. So I just did that thing where I opened the book, and I looked at it, and it gave me something that I needed at the moment. It was one of those strong inspirational books. When I finished reading the whole thing, it's all inspirational, but still the same passage that I opened to was so cool. And I thought, well, this is really very good. I don't know if it's a sign or what. But I had hoped to talk to Pat. Now, I didn't want to ask him to be a co-author, because I figured he was busy writing songs and his own books. But when he happened to come to town, and I got a chance to meet him and thank him, and I started telling him about what I was doing, and he said, if you ever need any help, just ask me. I didn't think that was fair. I said, okay, if you're going to help me, then why don't you be my co-author? And he taught me how to lay out the book, and he helped me make the stories, make sure that they're technically right. And I would write and send them to him, and he laid out the cover, which was a picture of me that I already had, but, designed it, and I'm really proud of it. But he's a really good guy and a great author, and but some of the book stories were already stories I had written, but then later, as we got adding stories, it was so cool, because people that I didn't even tell that I was writing a book about miracles, they would just start telling me miracles, like it was intended that I share them, which I thought was so cool. And the title wasn't something, it's God Rains Miracles, but it's rains like it's raining all around us. So there's miracles that are small and big, and one of the main messages from the book is not just the miracles that's in it, but it's that they happen all the time, and learn to recognize them and remember them. But the title, when I thought, I need a title, and it's like God Rains Miracles, where'd that come from? And it was neat, because Don liked it too, and it's just a book that I think was meant to happen when it happened, which is now. So.
You just said it very well, a sense that, things start to fall into place sometimes for reasons that we can't explain. And enough said about that. So that's you said it very well indeed. So God Rains Miracles, co-authored with Don Tomlinson, a forward by one of my favorites of all time, Brenda Lee. So that maybe if I can talk to Irlene off camera, maybe she can put me in touch with Brenda, because she is just fabulous. She's the kind, she says, that people walk up to her door and knock on the door because they just want to either leave her something or flowers, or just to say hello. I mean, and she's just a marvelous person. But
she is amazing. And Don said, "Who do you want to write the forward?" And instantly, I'm like, Brenda Lee.
There you
and
go.
He goes, really? He goes, Brenda Lee, my dad. That's the only artist that my dad would drive hundreds of miles to go see her. He goes, wow, you could get her? And I'm like, she's so wonderful. We did Family Feud with Brenda Lee. It was my dad, my mom, and the three of us girls, and the Statler brothers, and they needed one more person. It was the Statler brothers and Brenda Lee. And you get to know she's incredibly talented, but when you're around her, you get to know that she's funny, witty, and she's beautiful anyway.
She's very sharp, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. All right, Irlene Mandrell, the solo CD, Thanks to You, on Reviver Records. The book, God Reigns Miracles, co-authored with Don Tomlinson, with a foreword by Little Miss Dynamite Brenda Lee. For more information on what Irlene is up to, IrleneMandrell.com. And we are going to leave you with a track from her latest CD. Irlene, can't thank you enough. We look forward to more adventures and having you back on. I appreciate you taking the time.
I loved it, Larry. Thank you.
Thank you. And we thank you for joining us here on this episode of Studio 411. We're going to end with a little montage set to the song Sergeant Kelly's Bridge, which Irlene helped to add some additional lyrics and helped to add a writing credit to that song for herself. So we thank you again for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next time, and take care. We'll see you soon.
There's a bridge I cross on my way home. I never paid it any mind till a year ago. Back then it was just a way across Ingram's Creek. Back then it didn't mean a thing to me. But it's different now. Local hero fell, and the army flew his body home from that godforsaken hell. And the flag flew at half-mast on the courthouse square, while the parade wound on out of town past the county fair, past the swimming pool and the old high school and the graveyard on the ridge, just the other side of Sergeant Michael Kelly's Bridge. Behind a daughter and a son, left behind a mom and dad. He was their only one. They were so proud of all he's done. Before the war I made a promise to my best friend, if he didn't come home I'd watch out for them. And the flag flew at half-mast on the courthouse square, while the parade wound on out of town past the county fair, past the swimming pool and the old high school and the graveyard on the ridge, just the other side of Sergeant Michael Kelly's Bridge. And for all the roads and bridges that we cross, named for the heroes that we lost, let us not forget that they paid the price to give us our freedom and what they've sacrificed. And the flag flew at half-mast on the courthouse square, while the parade wound on out of town past the county fair, past the swimming pool and the old high school and the graveyard on the ridge, just the other side of Sergeant Michael